Good morning YouTube and welcome to the channel. My name's James Stone and today we will be reviewing the legendary BMW 1M. So for those of you that are not aware, the BMW 1M is a pretty special car. There are things I really like about it. There are some things I don't like about it. And in today's video, we're going to be discussing that. So follow me on this one where we review this one of 450 examples ever made. So we've been blessed today with the weather. Honestly, this colour in the sun absolutely pops, but we'll go more into that later in the video. So I've been very lucky that my good friend and boss, Aaron, has let me take the 1M out today to review. Now, it's not the first time I've driven a 1M, which is a surprise I'm sure to many because they're such a rare car. I've actually found myself back in one again. Matt had one previously, well before the days of me really getting into YouTube, and it was a monster, modified, and it really did fly, but at the time it didn't really float my boat. But today, like I say, we'll discuss that in further detail. Now, with this being a performance car, we should really start on the engine. So it's a 3-litre straight 6 turboed, engine code N54, good for around 335 horsepower and around 330 foot-pounds at the flywheel. Now, for me, this has probably been the bit of the car that I dislike the most. Not that the N54 is a bad engine, it is just pulled straight from the 135i of the time. It's just not an M engine, and a lot of people say, well, yes, the N engines, you know, times have changed, emissions have changed, you can't keep driving around in NA stuff. But when this car was built, the V8 M3 was out. A few years before that, the E46 had the S54, and it's just for me a bit of a shame. And that's not to say it's a bad engine. The engine pulls incredibly well. It's just not rev hungry. And for, I guess, a generation like myself where we grew up really working the box for the power, that's what I enjoy. I really do enjoy an NA engine. And again, I do have to stress it's not a bad engine at all. It pulls incredibly well. It's nice and smooth, makes the right noise for a standard car. It just doesn't have that rev happy engine like found in the V8 M3 that this car is essentially built out of. So second gear, 2000, there we go. God. It does go, there is no doubt in that. Plenty of power there, but it's really hard to relay in this video that everything comes in at around 3,000 and you get to about 6.5, red line being 7, and you feel you've done enough with that engine. It doesn't want to be kept above 5,000 RPM, not that it won't, it's just not that way inclined with it being boosted, especially at this age. And obviously the engine is from the 135i, which is a daily car, it's not a high performance car. So moving from the engine to the gearbox. Well, for those that have watched the channel, I'm not a BMW manual fanboy. I've got the SMG in the E46, which is questionable around town, I'll give you that. I've got the DCT in the E92, which I think is fantastic. And obviously in the 1M, you've only got the option of the 6-speed manual. Now, it's not a bad box. Again, I'm not going to sound like a real harsh critic on it. It does go into gear nicely. There's no resistance. It's pretty forgiving. It's not like the Hondas where you do have to be super precise, but it's not particularly satisfying. It's a little bit notchy, a little bit clunky, and that's not unique to this car. I've driven many cars, especially the BMWs over the years, and they're all like it. Now, there is a solution. You can install a CAE shifter or a Cooler Works unit, big one that comes out the dash. You lose that factory look. You could fit the M5 shortened gear knob, which sits a bit lower, but ultimately BMWs and manuals for me just don't go hand in hand. And I'm sure there are those that absolutely love the manual, so I'm not hating on them that much. I'm just saying, as a weekend car, it's not a satisfying gear shift. So now with the engine out of the way, obviously the key talking point will focus on the interior. Now, like all BMWs really, if you buy a normal 1 Series, it's a nice place to be inside. So the 1M was obviously going to have a good base to work from. It's nicely put together, nothing really rattles, the controls will work. The nav now in 2021 is a little bit dated, still more than usable. You can really feel that in the newer stuff when you drive it, how the technology's really come along. But that's not the car's fault, that's going to be the same for most manufacturers. The wonderful thing with this is it does share a lot of components with the E92 M3, the car that was out at around the same sort of time, so it made sense. Now, steering wheel and weight, all beautiful. Hydraulic still, which they've kept, which is a wonderful thing. And you've still got all your steering wheel comforts. You've got the M performance button on the steering wheel. The only problem with that is it doesn't do a lot. The M button on the steering wheel simply changes the throttle response to aggressive and soft, whereas this could have been programmed to be like the E92 where it had adaptive damping, which you don't get on the 1M. You can have different layers of traction control into MDM or just in normal, and if you've got the DCT, the presets, but in the 1M it literally just does throttle response. Seats wise, this is where I start to pick on the car, which I'm sure most that know me would have thought it'd be the engine. For such a special and unique car, you get the standard seats as found in the 1 Series. Now they are stitched with a nice little orange stitching to match in with the dash that's got parts of Alcantara. It'd have been nice if they'd have done the steering wheel in Alcantara, that would have been really nice. So unfortunately, interior marks, I'm gonna give it an average. Not horrific, just not something that I'd be particularly thrilled with spending 40, or now with how they've appreciated, 50, 60,000 pounds. The good news is there is a solution. So you can buy the M Performance seats, a lot of money, about £4,500 pounds, but essentially what they are is a retrimmed BMW version of the Recaro CS. So good support, still get the heated seats, and just a lovely looking piece of kit. Whereas when you look through the window of this, it's a bit underwhelming compared to the outside because it's such a fantastic body on it that you look and you think, just standard 1 Series inside. Now that's where that torque's good. It is fast. There's no denying that. It is a quick car. The final thing you could do to improve the interior, you could fit M4 seats. Now I've done this in the E92, they look the part, they're BMW finish, and I would have thought, given that this is the same age as the E92 and shares so many components, that you could do the modification as I've done with the E92 to make them work like factory, forward, backward heating. And you do sit high in them, they're not particularly supportive and they don't look great. So it's probably my biggest gripe for the interior. The only final thing that is a little bit annoying, given that it is an M car, is you don't get the LED dash lights. So what that is essentially is when you're getting near to the red line, the clocks, which I'll overlay a clip of the E92 and the E46, will start blinking as you get near the red line. Now, we can all read a rev counter. It doesn't need to be there, but it adds to that special BMW feeling. And for me, they should have put that in there. Moving on to the suspension and brakes. Well, as I said, it shares a lot of components with the E92 M3. The rear assembly is pretty much all E92. It's got the diff, the subframe, all from that era of the car. You've also got the BMW M3 competition wheels as standard in silver on this, and you've got the braking system from the E92 as well, which is single pot pistons. So again, always of the car of this era for BMW, not particularly great, doesn't provide good use for track driving, but for road with some uprated pads and some braided lines, it's going to do the job. I think with most of these now becoming so collectible, they're not that car anymore. You're not going to find people spanking them around the track anymore. So OEM is probably going to do you fine for your odd Sunday drive, depending on how hard you push it. Moving on to the exterior, well, it's the talking point for everyone. It looks so beefcake. It's got the wide arches, the small body. Even like now, all these years later, I still look at it and think, looks wise, it's one of the best. It's got 3 colour choices out the factory. You've got the Alpine White, the Sapphire Black, and this one, arguably the most desirable, Valencia Orange. And in the sun, I'll try and get a clip of this when it's sparkling. It really does look fantastic. So they've hit the nail on the head with the styling. The only gripe that I would go with on that is standard ride height on the front is very high. Not a big problem because, like I say, you can buy springs, you can buy coilovers. It hasn't got the electronic damping, so it's pretty easy to change the suspension out. Something really tasty like some Öhlins or Nitron coilovers. But for a standard car, using it on the road, you're probably just going to want a set of eye-back springs just to clean it off. But at the same time, you do risk damaging that front splitter on the speed bumps that we have, unfortunately, where we are around London. Price-wise, well, from what I could gather, and like I say, I wasn't into my BMWs back when these were released, they're around £40,000–45,000 new, depending on the options. This one's got the Harman Kardon, all the nav and everything, so it's been well spec'd from the factory. But if you were to buy one now, I think you'd struggle to get one for £40,000, and that is of 2021. I think 5 years' time, we could really be looking at an absolute fortune to buy one of these, like 60, 70 grand, the way CSLs are going. Who knows? The older stuff now is certainly becoming more appealing to a lot of people because it's not full of driver aids. You can turn it off. It's not fake sounds coming through the speaker system. It just is you and the car. So I guess the big one, would I own one? 100% yes. I think I just walked down to the garage to have breakfast in front of it. They are absolutely beautiful to look at. Would I spend £40,000–50,000 on one? No. And not because I don't think it's worth it as an investment or worth it as a car that will go up in value in years, but I just don't think, one, I would use it because I don't personally find the engine exciting enough. And again, that's my opinion. I'm not saying that's how everyone would feel about it. If you like boost and power coming in, Aaron hasn't driven anything like this before and he was blown away by the performance, whereas I do prefer the stuff that screams up the top. If BMW, and I say a big if because there are many factors in the way BMW do their marketing, the way they obviously put the cars out for production, is if they had have put the V8 M3, the S65 in this with the DCT gearbox, yeah, I think I'd sell a kidney for one. I think that would be absolutely incredible because it would look awesome, it would sound awesome. There are many that will, I'm sure, in the comments say, well, they can't do that, it can't be more powerful than the M3. Well, they could have put a single throttle body on it rather than individual ITBs, brought the power down, maybe capped the red line. They've done it with the M2 competition, same engine as the M3, so it would have been doable. Obviously, emissions would be a big factor, but imagine if they'd done the S54 from the E46 M3 coupled with a DCT. With a carbon inlet on it, man, that would be a special car. So yeah, I mean, if they'd have done it, they're too expensive for me to ever even dream of, one, buying one, and two, ripping it apart to make it non-original. But that would be the swayer for me to be in one of these. Definitely some better seats, some Recaro CSs, and I think it could just be an all-round everything perfect car, modern day E46 M3. And one thing that I've said on the review we did of Matt's F80 M3, even his Civic, even the E92, is they're big cars. They're no longer little cars anymore, whereas this is still at the side. I mean, now you can see I'm manoeuvring, I'm still well within my lines on the road, whereas if I was in the F80 M3, you're straddling it. You are using the whole road, really. So, handling, I guess this is where is it going to be a weekend car? Well, we're on a pretty bumpy road today. The power is... it's a twitchy car. It feels... I wouldn't want to drive it fast and feel relaxed. It's certainly following the road a lot. Again, not a terrible thing, just something that keeps you on your toes a little bit. It doesn't soak the bumps up particularly well. You haven't got the electronic damping control to be able to adjust it, but it is good fun. There is no doubt in that at all. It is a real pleasure to drive, and it's a shame I haven't got a camera on the front because everywhere I've been going in it, people are stopping and just looking. One, the colour, and two, if you know it, you know you don't see many of them on the road. Oh, yeah, it's quick. There is no doubt in that. and a real pleasure to drive, really is. Now, I'll go back to the one Matt had, Valencia Orange as well. We were a little bit younger back then, so we're all about that power, really hungry for it. And he'd done, I think he had the intercooler, remap, decat, maybe a catback exhaust, and for me it ruined the car, not because it couldn't handle the power, but because the power on the standard Kurt turbo came in so hard at 3k, and by 5,000 it was puffed out. It just did not want to play that game holding that RPM. So I wouldn't modify one of these with a map. The only thing driving it today is it would be nice if it had a bit more noise. And again, that's the same for all of them. They all are pretty quiet, other than until the F80 come out. Everything was very muted in terms of volume, but it still makes a nice noise. You put your foot down, even with it being turbo, which straighten up here is a bit of a car. That yeah, very, very, like all them cars, very easy to get carried away, almost too easy. You just want more and more. But the more I'm driving the manual today, the more I'm beginning to forgive it. Now, this example has got 36,000 miles on it. It is not a high mileage car. It's not going to be tired. Sure, rubber does get old, but even in it today, the steering wheel feels lovely. The Alcantara isn't worn. It still has a lovely, like, new smell to it. And I really hope Aaron keeps this. He's toyed with selling it, not because there's anything wrong with it. It's just Aaron. If you've seen any of the videos I've done on his bikes, which we've got more coming later this year, he does like a change up. But like I say, I think he's going to do okay, because he bought this in the winter. Values, like, for those that have been following my S2000 build, they're just going crazy for the old stuff, really crazy. Will the bubble burst? Who knows? But for now, let's just enjoy the sweet stuff like this that we can until we're all in automated electric cars. So a big thanks to Aaron today for letting me take the 1M out, a car we've wanted to review. He said to me we should get it on the channel. It's such a beautiful thing, and I really appreciate him letting me take it out today. It's a lot of value. There's no stupid driving today. One, I'm grateful that someone lets me use their car. The traction control has stayed permanently on. It's just not worth it. Like, a car like this, I just couldn't even replace because of how rare it is, not just the financial side of it that I'm referring to. So really appreciate it. I hope you guys enjoyed the ride along in the video. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you give us a like and a subscribe. Until next time, thanks for watching. So you'll have to excuse this clip, we're doing the rev counter and cable, but I just realised while filming outside I have to explain the Tasmanian Devil sticker on the back. Now, don't freak out, it's just a sticker, but it's something Aaron and his dad have had for years. So every vehicle he owns, if you've seen the TDR 250 video, that's on there as well. It does peel off, but it's just his thing. I'm not sold on it. I'd probably have it somewhere a little bit more discreet, but we each have our poisons, and his is a Tasmanian Devil sticker.